My name is Greg DeKoenigsberg. I am the VP of Community for a little company called Eucalyptus Systems. We are a private cloud company based in Santa Barbara, California. We believe in open source. We love open source. And I have half an hour, which I don't even have to use all of if it helps us get back on track. And I didn't bring a deck because I don't believe in them. I don't like them. So here are the things I want you to know about me. My Twitter handle is GregDEK, G-R-E-G-D-E-K. If you have any questions, get in touch with me there, publicly or privately, and I'll be happy to get in touch with you. Do I need to repeat that? Or G-R-E-G-D-E-K, Twitter. First of all, I'll talk a little bit about what it is that we sort of do at Eucalyptus, and then I'm going to immediately open it up for questions and answers, because some of you may already know some stuff about Eucalyptus and have some questions, and in the limited amount of time I would like to get to those first. If there are not any, then I will continue to talk about whatever topic may be interesting until we run out of time, and that's about it. So, a little bit of history about Eucalyptus. Was founded in 2007 as a research project at UC Santa Barbara by Professor Dr. Superman Rich Wolski and 6 of his graduate students, the founders. All fail the hounders. Founders. All fail the hounders. Did I say that? That's outstanding. All hail the founders. So basically the idea was Amazon is awesome. AWS is awesome. You should be able to build your own AWS. That was as far as the thinking went. Now here we are many years later, and there's lots of give and take about what cloud platform is best, what public cloud, what private cloud. The Eucalyptus value proposition is fairly simple. We believe that AWS is way out in front, and we believe in the principle of joining with strong forces, right? So the whole time, as all of these people in the cloud world are sort of figuring out what APIs they're going to produce, we picked the one that we thought was going to be the winner, and we made sure that we aligned with that winner as best we could. So here we are some years later, and there's lots of different opportunities, but public cloud providers and lots of private cloud providers and lots of services going back and forth between all of them. But we still believe, and we believe that the numbers are bearing us out, that Amazon AWS is the biggest, fastest moving, most innovative public cloud platform. And we are going to do our very best to provide a private cloud, an on-premise cloud, that gives you as much of that functionality on-premise as we can possibly give you. Now that's always going to be a challenge, and they're always going to be in front, but we are continuing to slowly expand our fidelity with AWS. Earlier this year, we signed a deal with them so that they will actually help us along with that, and we'll go into joint customer opportunities together, right? For us, it's kind of a big deal because it's Amazon admitting that on-premise cloud is actually a thing, which previously they weren't really keen to say. So even getting them to say that on-premise cloud is a thing that matters and that people should care about, we think is a big step forward. Any questions so far? Yes.
Amazon used to have a private cloud offering?
So Amazon does have what they call a virtual private cloud, but there is a huge difference between a virtual private cloud and an on-premise cloud. Okay? They prefer that we say on-premise cloud and not private cloud because they have their own private cloud and they feel like that can be confusing. So we now talk about it as an on-premise cloud, right? Why do you need an on-premise cloud? Number one, if you're the NSA, right? Number two, if for whatever reason you have a whole bunch of systems lying around that you want to get some use out of, and that's a huge use case, right? A good opportunity to talk about what I call the sysadmin's lament. And this is a thing that I saw. Before I was at Eucalyptus, I worked at Red Hat for almost 10 years as a community guy there. Was responsible for a lot of projects, did a lot of stuff. Red Hat is interesting because there's a lot of people doing skunkworks projects at all times. And it's really interesting to watch when a developer needs a resource for a skunkworks project. And in the old world, all of these resources were governed by sysadmins, right? The BOFH, whose job is nominally to provide you with resources, but an equally competing motivation is not to deal with the headache that is users with bizarre requirements every day of their lives, asking them to do trivial nonsense, right? So IT departments grow all this kind of process that finds that happy medium between giving the user what they want and not making all of their sysadmins quit, right? So you've got papers that you have to fill out in triplicate to get these 5 new Dell servers to do whatever. And over time, in large enterprises in particular, sysadmins have started to see those requests go away, right? Because there has come an inflection point where the developer says, I don't need to deal with the hassle of figuring out how to get these resources in-house for this little innovative project that I'm working on. I am going to do this and type in my credit card number, and I'm going to get 5 servers of my own for 8 cents an hour or whatever it is on Amazon that day, right? For a sysadmin, that's a relief right up until the point where it's terrifying, right? And so the sysadmin is immediately in the position, and the IT department as a whole, is in the position of figuring out how to mitigate this, what is now a risk of all of these servers that are, you know, capitalized, depreciating. Should we buy more servers when there's all this stuff in the cloud? So that's another reason that private cloud is important. There's a huge legacy investment that these companies have to protect, and private cloud is one of the ways to do that, right? Yes?
Does the agreement with Amazon cover Eucalyptus product, or does it extend fully to Eucalyptus open source? The question is, obviously, if I take the Eucalyptus open source and use it to stand up a public cloud, is there any issue related to the agreement with Amazon?
Let me back up first of all and say, very shortly, in like a month, there's going to be no difference between the open source version and the enterprise version, right? So, given that, what you're asking is, can a user go and install our GPL v3 code and know that they are safe from IP issues from Amazon?
As a public cloud, you keep talking about the on-premises. The question is, that, you know, if some hosting provider decides this would be a great way of doing a public cloud, is there any restriction?
You will have to ask Amazon about that, right?
Okay.
The answer is no.
I mean, Rich talked to Rich Wolski last week, and he said, I'm not a lawyer, so I guess the same thing applies.
Yeah, you ask Amazon's counsel about those questions, right? From my perspective, we stick to our knitting, which is enterprise customers, right? There are a number of players out there. I would say that OpenStack in particular is very well geared towards serving the public cloud provider because they come from a public cloud heritage, right? We come from a heritage of making an on-premise cloud that is meant to be compatible with Amazon, so that's the use case that we focus on. If there are public cloud providers who want to come to us and give us money, we're not going to turn that money away. We're going to provide them a minimum viable product, but our focus is on the enterprise customer. Any other questions, or shall I start meandering again? Because I'm happy to do that. How are we doing on time? Let's see. It is 3:21, good, so 25 minutes. In fact, let me talk a little bit about open source and Eucalyptus. And this is sort of how we got from here to there. It's a little history lesson, and it talks about where we're going and the importance of open source to us as a company. Early on, Eucalyptus was one of the only games in town, right? With Eucalyptus 1.5, we were pretty much the only open source on-premise cloud provider that had any traction. We ended up signing a deal with Canonical to be the backend for their Ubuntu Enterprise Cloud. And we started to see traction from customers. In the 2.0 time frame, the company made the decision to split off two different versions of the product. There was the 2.0 enterprise product, the EE version, and the 2.0 open source project. So the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And when you create an enterprise product and then you have an open source version, one can say all day, we are going to keep these two versions in lockstep, and when a fix gets committed here, we're going to put it in the open source code base. Well, when you are a small company that is fighting to get reference customers, and there's an emerging market around you, and you only have so many resources to fix so many problems, the customer wins. The customer always wins. And because Eucalyptus is a business, the customer should win, right? Unfortunately, there was a structure whereby the only way we could serve the customer was by putting code into this side, the EE side, and then the 2.0 side, the open source side, sort of decayed a bit, right? Patches weren't going back in. It didn't appear that this version was progressing, whereas on this side, lots and lots of stuff was happening. Fortunately, as a company, we have realized the folly of that, right? The fundamental problem is that when those two code bases are separate, you can't bring them back together in an easy way. So we made the investment over the last several months to bring those two code bases back together. There are now a small handful of pieces that are available only to enterprise subscribers, which are largely connecting points with other pieces of proprietary software that we cannot legally open. Right? Everything else is going to be open source. So, and in a 3.1 version, and the GA for that is scheduled to be June 15th, the 3.1 version will be the only version of the software, and then for enterprise customers, there will be a set-aside package repository that will have additional functionality, but all of the changes will go into the mainline code base. Yes, Mark?
What happens when someone pulls a copy of an open source Eucalyptus, makes a change, fixes a bug or adds a feature, and issues a pull request to
Hey, that's a great question, and a really good one, and one that you probably lived through. So, Mark was at Eucalyptus before he went to Red Hat, which is funny because I was at Red Hat before I went to Eucalyptus. It's an incestuous little word, isn't it? It's a great question, and it was a big problem for us, right? Because in our previous incarnation, it was very difficult to do that because people saw the open source side, and they would make changes to the open source side that weren't necessarily easily pulled into the closed side because the two code bases were divergent, right? So once we solved the problem of divergence, solving the problem of patching and resubmitting is a relatively simple one. So sometime in the very near future, as in maybe this week, maybe next week, we'll be moving all of our code to GitHub, right? So it will be a simple pull request. We've actually got a couple of engineers whose job it is, and this, as VP of Community, this is one of the things I insisted on. Make it somebody's job to look at patches in a timely manner and get them in. If we are going to grow and be successful as an open source entity, company, organization, making sure that we are treating patches like gold is extremely important to us. And so that's how we'll be solving that. Yes?
Why do you use the GNU GPL instead of the Affero GPL?
So name me a company that's using the Affero GPL to make money.
It should be Eucalyptus.
Yeah, it's not going to be.
The Affero GPL has not really been properly reviewed by real intellectual property lawyers.
Let me put it this way. Pioneers get the arrows, settlers get the land, right? We just closed a $30 million investment round. We want to make sure that everybody has jobs and we grow as a company, and choosing the Affero to prove a point, probably not the best thing for our shareholders.
The GPL
right?
allows people to make changes and do whatever they want on their server with
Right.
those changes.
That's right.
Never having to contribute them back to the open source community.
Right.
The only difference between the Affero and the GPL is that if you have an Affero licensed open source product and you make changes to it and you deploy those changes only on your own server, you're still obligated to release those changes that you've made to users of your server.
Right. So I understand the Affero and how it works. You don't even see people choosing GPL anymore, right? OpenStack and CloudStack are both MIT. So people are moving farther away from that, not closer towards, and yet there are still being communities built. The open question is, how restrictive does a license have to be in order to generate community involvement, right? We still believe that the GPL v3 has value, and so we're sticking to it, especially as a software company that makes its money as a software company, right? You know, it's a simple business decision. I don't think it makes sense for us to try to, you know, homestead using the Affero license when we're doing perfectly well with the GPL v3. Any other questions? Right, so, let's see what time it is now. It's going nicely. Maybe I'll just wrap up. That's about 18 minutes worth, so I have 12 minutes. What's important to me? What do I want to talk about? I guess I want to talk about the importance of APIs and choice, and the importance of a growing ecosystem. It's a funny thing when someone like OpenStack shows up to the party and has a new API and a bunch of developer mindshare and a bunch of companies joining up. It sort of crystallizes the focus and thinking of other players in the market. So I can't speak for Amazon, but I can only tell you what I think. And I think that Amazon is paying attention. One of the motivations that I have in being in the open source world is to provide users choice. Without a company like Eucalyptus that cares primarily about API fidelity for Amazon and making sure that customers have a choice other than just Amazon if they become Amazon users, the big thing for me, and the reason I'm at Eucalyptus, is because for me it's a tremendous opportunity to make sure that public cloud companies are accountable, right? Eucalyptus is a very particular case that allows us to keep Amazon honest a little bit, right? It's much more difficult to lock people in when there are alternatives. We choose to be the strong alternative for Amazon, and the OpenStack universe is going to have many strong alternatives to Rackspace. And I think that's a good thing, right? Yes.
Technical question is, now that I'm creating and destroying virtual machines on a daily basis, I'm realizing that the operating system sucks. The idea of an operating system, as it's implemented today, is very poorly ill-conceived.
In what way? What makes you say that?
Because it is the operating systems that we're working with are designed to be bloated and be general purpose.
Aha, so let me recount some of this because I don't know where this is going. The assertion, now that the gentleman in the back is building up and tearing down machines every day, is that the OS is designed to be bloated and multi-purpose when I presume it should be streamlined and single-purpose. So are you going somewhere with that assertion, or?
Yes, it should be more streamlined, not single-purpose, but instead of being, as typical OS is today, instead of being designed to do many things and be compatible with many different devices and have a library of device drivers and so on and so forth. We no longer need, if we're just creating and destroying virtual machines, we only need Eucalyptus to be compatible with the hardware and have the device drivers. And as long as it can expose to us the virtual driver interfaces, why not have an operating system that is tuned for deployment as a virtual machine instead of being bloated?
So the question is, in the world of virtual machines, why can Eucalyptus not simply be a manager of those very streamlined next-gen OSs that are primarily about virtualization and nothing else? Right? That's kind of what the hypervisor is intended to be, and everyone's fighting about, you know, which one is the best, because the KVM folks would tell you they already have that, as would the Zen folks, as would the VMware folks, as would the Hyper-V folks, right? So
apart from that, you should just, if you want that, just join the GEOS, just enough operating system movement, right? There's a lot of work there.
Yeah.
Just slim down guest operating systems.
Yeah.
That's not. I assume that you're going to.
we've got a ton. We've got. It's about sticking to our knitting, right? It's about sticking to our knitting. We've got a very clear business proposition that is, and we're being quite successful at it, and that is make sure that we are protecting companies' legacy investments in lots of different hardware, lots of different hypervisors, and make sure that they are protected when the move to public cloud, and specifically AWS, happens in earnest. Right? That they've got the ability to, if they've got all of these things and they want to burst to Amazon, that they can do that. If they've moved their operations primarily to Amazon and they want to burst back into some private cloud or bring back particular loads that may be sensitive in some way, they can do that as well. Right? All of these pain points, we're feeling them too. Right? And I can, when the number of times we look at the number of hypervisors and say, boy, couldn't we just pick this one that's more performant? Well, we would love to do that, but that's not what our customers need, right? So I strongly encourage exactly what you're saying. So pick up that and the just-in-time operating system. Just enough. Geos, the just enough operating system. That's a lovely thing. Viva la revolution.
To what extent is security an issue? Data security issue that drives enterprises to private on-premise?
To what extent is security an issue? Oh, so I'll put on my private cloud provider hat. The public cloud is terrifying. Oh my God, stay away from it. They have all your data.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of cloud washing companies that are going to tell you exactly that, right? You want private cloud because the public cloud is scary. But the fact is that they've got lots and lots of security experts for a very good reason. And I think there's probably an inflection point where they're paying their security people way more than you can, so their security policies are better by default than yours are likely to be. And there will come a point when you care enough about security that maybe that balance changes, but maybe it doesn't, right? It's certainly an issue, and and I think there's going to be a side market that develops about. There's a fellow on the Eucalyptus community mailing list. His name is Arshad Noor. He runs a company called Strong Off, and that's his whole business, right? His whole business is doing whatever is necessary to make public cloud data management safer, right? So he's got a whole suite of tools for how to do that. But I don't think it's super significant for most customers. I think there may be more questions about compliance, Sarbanes-Oxley and those kinds of things. I don't know the details of that well enough. So I guess the short answer is, I guess for some it's an issue. It wouldn't particularly be for me. And in the year when I was running the IT shop for a small education nonprofit between jobs, I did everything on AWS, and security wasn't a particular concern for me because I trusted the vendor, right? And if you're doing any hosting, at some point you have to trust the vendor with your security. If you don't have your own data center, with armed guards around the perimeter, if you're hosting something somewhere, you got to trust the security. That's the thing. Cloud is really just hosting, in a way, right? They're very similar. It's just way more efficient hosting in a different order of magnitude. But the same problems that have been in the hosting world are still there, and they haven't changed.
Thanks.
All right. So I'm just about done. I'll wrap up a little quick so we can get closer back to whatever schedule we had. So briefly, I'll talk about Eucalyptus 3.1 is coming June 15th. There will probably be a technology preview beta 1 on May 15th, so we'll make that as available as we can. You can actually go get Eucalyptus 3.0 if you want to. It's a great product. It's not yet fully open source, but it's available for a free trial if you go to eucalyptus.com. Had I had more time, I would have shown you the demo with my 2 laptops, because I can build a Eucalyptus cloud in under an hour, but I only had 25 minutes, so there wasn't time for that. I love OpenShift. I love OpenPaaS. I hope there are more OpenPaaS providers in the future because that is the perfect way of moving PaaS stuff back and forth between a public cloud and a private cloud. If it's a PaaS that only runs in the public cloud, you will never be able to run that stuff on your private cloud, right? Unless they have an on-premise version, and if that's not open source, you probably don't want to be running an on-premise version. So I'm here to support OpenShift. I was actually here mostly just to figure out how to get OpenShift running in Eucalyptus by the time I left. But then they said, hey, maybe you should talk about something. I said, hey, okay, maybe I will. I have no idea what I'll talk about, but I'm sure I'll figure something out. scene. Thank you, everybody. Greg DEK is my Twitter, so say hello.